And so today is a very straightforward day. It couldn't be more straightforward. It's almost like so boring that it's so effective, but almost so boring that you're building a video around something that is so boring. And that's my exact point. Why is it boring? Why is it only exciting and sexy to talk about zone 2 or threshold or, really hard VO2 reps, when the bulk of the work that makes you better at running is getting it done on a day-to-day basis and doing it really well? It was never zone 2, it was never threshold, it was never what percentage of your training is VO2 max reps. The way to be better at running is really simple. Getting out there on a day-to-day basis and putting in work, putting in good work. What changes over time is how good you are at executing it. What changes over time is the percentages of the work that you're doing that can be at certain efforts, that can be at certain speeds. But the basic fundamental way to get better at running is to run more and run for a longer period of time. That will never change, no matter how social media changes, no matter what Strava says, training peaks, all these other concepts. The one thing that stays the exact same is getting out there and doing the training. So I think it goes without saying, 2005 would have been my first run around Richmond Park. Some of this journey that I'm going to take you on today, that run to Richmond Park, I've done that same route for a long time. And the reason I'm bringing attention to that is often when you're watching this channel, you're going to see paces that, might not make sense to you. You're going to see maybe it's technique, maybe it's, a low heart rate, maybe it's a super quick speed at threshold compared to what you're used to. But when you're making this sort of relevant, first of all, see joy in the fact that if you keep doing this for a longer period of time, it can get better. That's really exciting. But also don't get put off by those paces, because it's not why I show you them. I show you them because it guides you through what it did. I show you them so that you can see for context what I'm sort of up to, the journey I'm going on right now. It makes it a bit more interesting to watch me run into Richmond with the paces and the heart rate. It's that simple. It's not a brag. It's not to show off. Not at all. It's a really simple day. My brain is going mental because my brain's going, can we add a bit of steady? Should we throw in a little bit of threshold at the end? How can I add something sexy to today to make it more than you're just running to the park at 125, 130 pulse, no speed in there. You're just running to the park. When you get there, you're going to come up and down a hill pretty quick, back down again, up the hill again, pretty quick, back down again. You're going to do the job, you're going to run home, and then you're going to focus on your recovery. You're going to make sure you're hydrated. You're going to make sure that you have a little lie down in the afternoon to relax, and you're going to take care of business. You're doing that so that when you go into training for the rest of the week and the next couple of days, which might be on paper a little bit sexier, you're more recovered and you're more ready to do those. Hills are bloody brilliant, but they're a video in themselves. And I'll do that video, how to include hills, why you should include them, etc. Very important video. But today, it's looking at where things have changed and how to stay clear of that. Marginal gains is a massive concept in the world now. In every walk of life, you're looking at Oura Ring, Whoop, all these sort of like new tracking metrics and all the rest of it, not just for sport. You're looking at people wanting marginal gains for work, just for life in general, eating better, sleeping better, bringing the heart rate variability up, bringing the rest and heart rate down. And I think that's important. I really do. I think it's brilliant. But I'll tell you an example. In the build up to Tokyo in 2020 for the Olympics, here we go, Mr. Olympic. That's not why I'm telling you this. In the build up to that Olympics, it was going to be hot, right? And I was doing my morning training, and then I'd finish the morning training, and then I'd have an infrared sauna booked in the afternoon. I'd also have like a massage booked. I'd maybe book what was called a float therapy at the time to go and relax and do this. And I'd go do all my little bits and pieces, marginal gains, right? And I'd get home at maybe 4 o'clock and I'd be pissed off because of the traffic. I'd be roasting hot because I've came out of an infrared sauna, into the car, I'm driving, I'm sweating, cars are pissing me off. And I get back to the house And I remember in hindsight, having struggled at the Olympics with heat, I remember looking back thinking, I bet Kipchoge just went for a run with a extra few layers on, did his sort of heat work while he was out there training. And then when I'm driving around in that car, all over the shop, here, there, everywhere, Kipchoge's just sitting nice and relaxed, reading a book, probably drinking a cup of tea. Then he was hydrating, reading his book a little bit more, and then going for the evening training. And I've been driving here, there, everywhere for these marginal gains. And the problem is that when you start trying to try too hard for the little bits and pieces, it can start to take away from the bigger picture, which, if you remember back, was just get the training done. It doesn't mean that you can't wear a heart rate strap to do it well. But if you don't understand heart rate and you've never done a test, and it might only make you feel negative that your heart rate is now suddenly high because you've only started looking at it, but a month ago you didn't give a shit because you've never looked at it before, well then even be careful with things like that. In other words, if you're going to bring something in and you're going to start to do something, it is important to do it well. If you add in some kind of intervention that is a marginal gain, that's great. But make sure it's going to complement what you're already doing. And if what you're already doing is working and making you better at running, well, narrow in on that. Focus on doing that really well. And then you can look at like maybe what marginal gains might make things better. Something that, felt right today was that when you keep running pretty simple and you stay in the one place, one of the toughest challenges for me personally is just staying in the one place. But if you keep things pretty simple, and other things in life don't get in the way. We had teeth infections. If you don't do regular blood tests, there can be things going on with your blood, which there's not things going on with your blood, but there could be things going on with your body that shows up in a blood test, which could be high white blood cells. It could be low hemoglobin. It could be low vitamin D. It could be low iron. In other words, running already possesses opportunities where if certain things aren't in a good place, you won't adapt well to training. If your teeth aren't in a good place, you won't adapt well to training. If you don't have a good diet and you don't sleep very much and you're not on top of your hydration, you won't adapt well to the training. When I talk about this is the work and I have merchandise labeled this is the work. The work is what are you doing, not just during the training, but either side of the training to make sure that your body can adapt and respond to the training and get better, right? And so if you're not putting in those little bits of work outside of the actual running, well then things like teeth infections can pop up. If you're not getting regular tests, if you're not on top of your iron or your vitamin D or your vitamin B or all these other things can show up in your blood. If there's little bits going on within the body that either you know about or you don't know about, you might not respond well to training. What became really interesting today is that things for 2.5 weeks have just kind of got better and better. And I said, I love when running works that way. When everything's really simple, there's no teeth infections and there's no stuff wrong with the blood because you're looking after things, you're eating well, sleeping well, recovering well, not traveling here, there and everywhere. Awesome. But the other really important part to that is that you're not putting things in the way. It's not just teeth. It's not just the sleep. It's not just the hydration. What if you're putting things in the way? What if you're pushing the training sometimes a bit too hard? What if you're driving here, there and everywhere? What if work's stressful at that moment in time? What if you have holidays booked, etc., etc.? So running can be super simple and it should always be kept as simple as possible. But my advice would be to get a big whiteboard or even just your notes, a little notebook. On my whiteboard, it would say, at all costs, if you've planned to just stay somewhere for 2-3 weeks and train in that place, stay there, stick to the training. And at the minute, I've almost celebrated every evening run that I just go in the park and I jog around nice and slow, because it's not the evening run. It's that I haven't gone anywhere or changed anything or added in altitude when I wasn't supposed to, or warm weather, or I'm so bad for throwing in these random things that ends up holding you back. And so that's my, guilty side of it. But you need to think to yourself, what are some of the things that you perhaps are adding into this very simple equation? Get out the door and do the training. Do it to the best of your ability. Execute it to the best of your ability. If it's easy, keep it easy. If it's a steadier run, do it at steady, but don't do it too hard. If you're doing threshold, try to work within that threshold area. VO2 max, will then push a little, but stick to the paces, stick to the recoveries, get it done, recover really well. That's your job. Your job is on a day-to-day basis to really stick to the simple stuff and do it really well. But you need to ask yourself, what parts of that equation might I make a mess of? What parts of that equation am I not doing a great job of that I could do better? Do you change sessions? Do you go too quick? Do you sometimes neglect the harder stuff? Are you sometimes moving around a lot, joining other groups and not sticking to your own program? You need to start figuring out, do you finish a session, shower, rush to work, not get your recovery within 20 minutes? You need to start asking yourself, what are some of the things that I might be holding myself back that I could now start working on that's going to make me better? And so the whole concept of today was simple will always trump when it gets really complicated. But I think somewhere in this whole journey in the last 5-6 years, the world has got pretty complicated, and that is due to social media. It's due to Strava. It's due to Training Peaks. It's due to all these other ideas that we now have that, might work. And there's no doubt about it, they might. But sometimes we're better following a pretty simple system, right? And as long as there's a system in place, a simple system will always trump little bits of everything. That's when it gets messy. When there's no global goal, there's no sort of like, this is taking me somewhere. It might be simple, but it's taking me somewhere and it's working, versus here, there, and everywhere. The other side to it is that multitasking, that you're going to training and what might be a really simple day, like that sort of simple day that I'm doing today, we're trying to ask too much from every day, and then we're not executing the part of the day that was important well, because we're asking too much of our bodies. We're trying to throw little bits in, we're trying to add little bits. Get back to just doing simple training really, really well, and then see where it takes you. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't do a steady run, that you shouldn't do threshold, you shouldn't do VO2, but it's just plan it, get out there, execute it really well, get back to the basics when you get home in terms of your recovery stuff. There is certainly a lost art in the running world now for simply just taking care of the training in a really simple way. And I think then what happens is over time, whether it's 8 weeks, 10 weeks, a couple of months, it drags a little bit because we're trying to almost achieve too much. Like I said, I've been going to this park for almost 20 years. My first run in this park was almost 20 years ago. And I can promise you that back then, there was parts of training that I did better than I'm almost doing now. Of course, there's areas of my running and my training that are way more advanced now. But some of the cool parts of running is that it doesn't need to be super advanced. Sometimes it can just be really simple, really basic, and go really, really well. So keep an eye on what you're doing. Make sure that you're not trying to reach for too much on some days. If you can simplify some things, I would say simplify it, and get back to not always trying to multitask or get greedy with it. Focus on one specific thing and do it really, really well. And don't worry about what's going on Strava or Training Peaks or anything else. You just focus on what you're doing and do it really, really well. Now, if there's any topics you'd like me to cover, comment below and we can look at, building some videos in like that. I obviously have the merchandise at joggingclo.com and the running school at joggingroom.com. But take care, like, subscribe, do all those lovely things, and have a great day.